Today is a big news day. First, President Trump announced that he will deliver a speech on national television tonight at 9 o'clock. Now, what we know is that all American TV stations are currently interrupting their programs. They are preparing to broadcast President Trump's speech live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. What he is going to say, we don't know yet, but we can guess. The second topic is, if the U.S. withdraws its troops, what will happen next in the Middle East? How will things be handled? What does Trump think will happen next? This is the second major topic of today. Third, Trump has already made it clear that he will no longer consider it to stay in NATO. So what does this mean for NATO and European countries? Fourth, the Supreme Court is currently holding hearings on birthright citizenship. For the first time in the 250-year history of the United States, an American president has personally gone to the Supreme Court. He sat below and listened. This has never happened before. Two questions. First, why has this never happened before? Second, why did President Trump break with precedent and go to the Supreme Court? So this is also the fourth topic I bring to you today. In short, there are many topics and all of them are major issues. Welcome to Listen and Watch. This is Fang Wei bringing you the Good Morning America program for our YouTube audience. Hello friends, I hope this greeting finds you well. Silicon Valley FM. Hello to all our Juliu Yi listeners. All right, now let's get straight to the main topic. Levette, White House spokesperson Levette posted a tweet last night on the X platform. Tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, President Trump will deliver a speech to the nation. He will provide important updates on the Iran issue. Now, what I mean is, we know about Polymark's official account, this online betting site, right? Surprisingly, they're also taking on a news role. He said, tonight, all the major broadcast television networks will interrupt their regular programming to air President Trump's speech. Is what he said really true? I checked, and when I looked into it, I said it's true, it really is the case. So, what will be said in that speech? Well, Levitt didn't say, so all we can do now is guess. All the media speculation is that Trump will address these topics in his speech tonight, announcing the withdrawal of troops from the Middle East, okay, and also talking about the specific reasons for this withdrawal. What exactly are they? What is the specific timetable for the withdrawal? And what kind of arrangements will be made for regional security afterward? These are the issues that might be discussed tonight. If that's the case, then of course. This is the biggest news since February 28th up to today. So why do we speculate this way? Because in the past day or two, Trump has repeatedly expressed this intention. Trump said there's no need to reach an agreement with Iran. So the regime has already changed, meaning the regime has already been replaced because we took out their first layer and then took out their second layer. So now it's a new regime and it's even easier to approach them. What he means by this is, you see, I basically do what I say. Of course, Trump actually didn't say he wanted to implement regime change. It's just that everyone hopes he can achieve a regime change. He said that now the regime has changed, and it's no longer such a hardline government. Then Trump said, when we believe that they have been bombed back to the Stone Age for a long period of time, the Stone Age. When they are no longer able to produce nuclear weapons, then they won't need to anymore. Whether or not we reach any agreement, it doesn't matter anymore. We will withdraw, we will leave. This is no longer important now. Then on Monday, Trump also threatened that if Iran does not agree to reach a deal, the United States will destroy Iran before withdrawing. All of its patrol boats, its main exports, the docks, Karg Island, and even Iran's desalination plants. Basically, to put it bluntly, it's about regime change and giving up. And then, before leaving, smash everything in Iran and then just walk away. That's the situation. So here's a question. Would Trump really smash everything in Iran? All those desalination plants, oil wells and everything else? Would he really destroy it all before leaving? What do you think? Usually that's how it goes, right? Because he's about to leave after all. Afterwards, he would go back and smash whatever is left, making it take even longer for you to recover, especially in terms of military capability. Logically, that makes sense. The question is, would Trump actually do something like that? I think sometimes Trump tends to make threats. He talks tough, but he doesn't necessarily follow through. So, how about we do a simple poll? What do you think, Fang Wei, about President Trump? Before leaving office, do you think he would, like the tweet he posted on Monday, actually strike Iran's export terminals, all of its patrol boats, and even its desalination plants? Will he do it or not? If you think he will, press 1. If you think he won't, press 2. I personally think he won't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Trump really does talk tough sometimes, but he doesn't always follow through. All right, now let's talk about this. Trump posted a tweet this morning. Trump said that Iran's new regime president is much less radical than his predecessor and also much smarter. He just made a request to the United States and China for a ceasefire. Trump said, we will consider a ceasefire, but only on the condition of the Strait of Hormuz. It must be open, it must be free, and it must be unobstructed. Before that, we will bomb Iran into ruins, or, as they often say, bomb them back to the Stone Age. He was clearly referring to the president of Iran. His name is Pezeshkian, right? So this person has two main characteristics. First, he is a reformist and a moderate. Indeed, Trump wasn't wrong. Second, and this is key, even if he says something, does it really count? Right now, the ones actually in power in Iran are the Revolutionary Guard and the leader of the Revolutionary Guard. Or rather, it's their generals. So this Pezeshkian, even though he is supposedly the president, has never really had the final say in Iran. That's just how it is. And almost at the same time, Iran's foreign minister, named Araghchi, stated that there are no negotiations between Iran and the United States, and that Tehran will not respond to the 15-point plan proposed earlier by Washington to end the Middle East conflict. He said that Iran has zero trust in the United States and will not accept a ceasefire request. Washington must completely end the war and provide compensation. Of course, that's impossible. The key issue now is this. After the US withdraws its troops, what will happen to the Strait of Hormuz? What will happen to the Middle East? President Trump has actually already addressed this. He mentioned it yesterday. In another 2 to 3 weeks, the US will withdraw from Iran. By then, it will be up to our allies. They'll have to fend for themselves in the Strait of Hormuz. That's essentially what it means. Then he said, everyone understands this point and we will withdraw soon. If France or other countries want oil or natural gas, they can go to the Strait of Hormuz themselves to get it. They can go directly and protect themselves. Actually, I think it's very safe there now because we've already toppled the Iranian regime. But whether they can get it or not has nothing to do with us. Whether they can get oil or not has nothing to do with us. What will happen in the Strait of Hormuz? I'm still quoting Trump's original words. What will happen? We won't get involved. Because these countries, including China itself will go there with their very beautiful ships. These beautiful ships, fill them up with oil, and then leave. This is their own business. They can handle it themselves. It has nothing to do with us Americans anymore. Let me translate this for Trump. That is to say, since we're fighting here, you all know, Europe, if you're not willing to help, then you can handle it yourselves. Figure out a way to keep the strait open, including if Iran demands a toll or passage fee, then you have to handle it yourselves. As for what is most likely to happen here, we all know. Now, as everyone can see, passing through the Strait of Hormuz, the main channel of the Strait of Hormuz is 36 kilometers wide. Now, it's very strange. The ships going in and the ships coming out are not following the usual routes. This main channel has to bend toward the Iranian coastline, running along the shore. There are 2 islands along the coast. One is called Larak Island, right? Larak Island. I don't know the name of the other island, but both of these islands are heavily guarded by Iranian troops. Iran uses missiles and threats to force ships to pass through this route. On the northern shore, that's where you pay the fee. $2 million per ship. Only after paying can you pass through. That's the situation. Let me break down the numbers for everyone. You all know that after Trump left office, the entire Strait of Hormuz returned to normal. Then Iran said, if you want to pass through my strait, you still have to pay. Because even the United States hasn't forced the strait to be opened. Why should they open it up? If it's 2 million per ship, do you know how many ships pass through each year? At its peak, it's 20 to 30,000 ships. 2 million times 30,000. What does that mean? 60 billion. 60 billion US dollars. And what does 60 billion US dollars mean? It's 4 times Iran's current military budget. So with 60 billion US dollars, Iran could rebuild very quickly. But the problem is, how can the buyers afford it? If everyone in the world who buys Middle Eastern oil had to pay compensation, who exactly is buying it globally? Many countries are buying Middle Eastern oil. In other words, the whole world is buying it. But the 4 biggest countries are, one is China, one is India, one is Japan, and one is South Korea. Europe also buys quite a lot. Of course, the 4 countries mentioned earlier buy the most. So if after the United States withdraws, Iran will once again have its hand on the throat. He will definitely let the oil pass because, how should I put it, that's his lifeline. While letting the oil through, he can demand a toll. As for this toll, everyone will just have to pay up obediently because the United States is no longer... If you can't force them, do you think you can? This is exactly the problem Trump gave to France and the UK. You go handle this. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Since you won't help me, of course I won't fight your war. That's the idea. So all the oil exported from these Gulf countries will surge in price. All of it will go up. So the ones who will suffer the most are exactly those we just mentioned. China, India, Japan, South Korea, plus the Gulf countries. Who profits the most? American oil suppliers, including those in Venezuela that the US will develop, these Venezuelan oil suppliers. They will all make a huge profit, of course. This also includes Russia. Russia will also make more money. So this time, Trump pulling out can really be called, I call it with 8 characters, losing face but gaining substance. So of course, if you say he lost face, well, that's just one perspective. Different people see it differently. That's just how it is. Many people will feel that nothing was actually accomplished. In the end, Trump would say, I never said I wanted regime change in the first place. What I said from the start was that all 4 objectives were achieved, right? Eliminate their nuclear weapons, eliminate their ballistic missiles, eliminate their navy, and also eliminate their cut off his ability to fund his followers all over the Middle East. These things, crippling his capabilities, would count as the fourth objective, which could also be considered achieved because once Iran is bombed into ruins, of course he would no longer have the ability to support those little brothers of his scattered throughout the Middle East. So that would also count as achieving the goal. So Trump could say, I'm just going to withdraw, and then I'll actually benefit from the rise in Middle Eastern oil prices. America will just sit back and reap the rewards. It's not just sitting on the mountain watching the tigers fight. American oil will make a huge profit in this situation. Moreover, if the U.S. develops oil in Venezuela, the transportation costs for that oil would obviously be minimal, so of course it would be competitive in the oil market, wouldn't it? Okay, but here lies the problem. Why is the United States still continuously increasing its troop presence? And it's not just the two Marine Corps units, the 11th and the 31st Marine Expeditionary Units. Marine Expeditionary Task Forces are heading to the Middle East. In addition, the 82nd Airborne Division has also arrived. And in addition, the U.S. Department of Defense is planning to send another 10,000 soldiers. Also, according to the latest news, yesterday the Pentagon announced that a third aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, will be deployed to the Middle East. In addition, there are 3 more ships, guided missile destroyers accompanying the deployment. So the entire carrier strike group consists of more than 6,000 soldiers. Meanwhile, over there, the so-called USS Lincoln and USS Ford are already stationed there. At the same time, the U.S. military continues to deploy more A-10 Thunderbolt II attack aircraft. These have recently entered the Middle East theater, according to the latest updates. A new batch of 12 fighter jets arrived at a base in the UK the night before last. So they're preparing to take turns heading to the front lines. These are the ground support units. So what's really going on? Trump, are you calling for a withdrawal or for reinforcements? But often when it comes to military matters, when you want to withdraw troops, you actually need to send in more, right? You need to send in more troops. You need to leave your rear guard behind, especially to serve as a deterrent. The other side doesn't dare to counterattack. It's definitely not, like people say. When withdrawing troops, if you have fewer and fewer soldiers each day, just like in Afghanistan back then, they got counterattacked. So when Trump was withdrawing troops, he was actually sending in reinforcements at the same time. But the other side didn't dare to counterattack. That's the whole idea. Only when the other side doesn't dare to act rashly can you safely withdraw your troops. Meanwhile, the latest news is that the UK has now decided to send additional forces to the Gulf region. The total number of military personnel deployed by the UK will reach 1,000. The UK's Defence Secretary John Healey met with British troops in Qatar. He said that this troop increase is to respond to Iran, the growing threat. He confirmed that the UK will send additional Typhoon fighter jets to Qatar and will provide counter-drone weapons and missile systems to Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Kuwait. He also condemned Iran for signs of expanding attacks in the Middle East. So this is only natural if, when they withdraw, European countries have no choice but to increase their troop presence. But think about it. How risky is it for you to increase troops now? The United States is no longer there. The U.S., with the American troops gone, if you send more troops, you'll actually be in even greater danger. So in a sense, this is an inevitable outcome. If this is how Europe is calculating things, then honestly, from my perspective, I think it's very disadvantageous for them. All right, next we'll talk about the Nordic countries and the issue of NATO in the Nordic region. The issue of NATO is a very sensitive one, and its impact is extremely significant. You could say that the Nordic countries were the first to act before things happened. Let me take a moment to talk about the sponsor of our product, the sponsor of this program. It's also a product that's closely related to us. It's what everyone can see here, Red Sea Cucumber, because recently the feedback from viewers who have been taking the Red Sea Cucumber health capsules has been remarkable. It really makes me want to share it with everyone again. There is a viewer with the surname Chin who is 70 years old this year. He has had pain and tightness in his right liver area for how long? 30 years. He has seen all kinds of specialists and undergone every possible test, but no one was able to cure him. So, what happened last Christmas? With a mindset of might as well give it a try, it can't hurt, he started taking it, Red Sea Cucumber. And what was the result? He said that in a very short time, the tightness in his liver disappeared, the pain eased, and even his sleep improved. He said this product is genuinely good. Absolutely true. Not only did he continue using it himself, he even paid out of his own pocket. During the new year, he bought a set for each family member as a gift for their health. Isn't that better than giving anything else? So here I want to add a statement. These are all personal experiences and results may vary from person to person. This product is a nutritional supplement and does not replace medical advice. Please use it in accordance with your doctor's instructions. Red Sea Cucumber health capsules contain natural seaweed sacs as well as collagen and mucopolysaccharides. They help support flexible joints, aid in body repair, relieve fatigue, and can also help maintain immunity and cardiovascular health. If you have elderly people at home or if you want to maintain your own daily health, it's definitely worth a try, right? From now until April 12th, let me mention this special promotion period. If you enter the promo code FANGWEI, you can enjoy a 15% discount. Also, if you order 60 capsules, there are additional gifts. Order 60 capsules and you'll receive a pack of Shenhuang honey body tablets as a gift. If you order 30 capsules, you'll get a sunscreen duo as a bonus. Additionally, all subscribers will receive a $10 Shenhuang voucher. For orders of 60 capsules in mainland China, you'll get a pack of Shenhuang honey body tablets and one Shenhuang black body stick. Plus, you'll also receive a $10 Shenhuang voucher. For more details, click the link below. Well, I just recommend everyone give it a try and see for yourself. If you've already tried it and think it's good, then I recommend you subscribe to the monthly plan. With one subscription, you get a 15% discount, and with two, it becomes a 20% discount. Secondly, you'll get priority service and won't have to worry about it being out of stock, all right? Now, let's get back to our topic and talk about if Trump wants to withdraw from the alliance, what will NATO do, or what will Europe do? So far, in the Iran war, Europe has not only refused to take action, but even France, Spain, and Italy have gone so far as to ban American aircraft. This has really damaged US-European relations to the point where they can no longer be repaired. In a sense, Trump is truly very angry. Not only him, though. Hagel, Sessions, and Rubio are also very angry. Even Rubio's angry, and the things he's saying are very harsh. So just now, when Trump was interviewed by the UK's Daily Telegraph, he said the following. He expressed several viewpoints. Let's listen to the first one. He has long held a skeptical attitude toward NATO's credibility. He said, "I've never been convinced by NATO." What does that mean? He said, "It's just you helping me, or just me. There's no such thing as you helping me. It's just me helping you. That's the situation." Second, he said, "I've always known that NATO is just a paper tiger." He said this many times. Third point, by the way, Putin is also very clear about this. What does that mean? He was saying that NATO is a paper tiger, actually. It has no teeth. Really, it doesn't dare to fight. So if Putin knows about this weakness, he'll keep pressing forward step by step. Okay, then the reporter asked, "Would you reconsider your decision to withdraw from NATO?" Trump said, "I won't reconsider. If I want to leave, I'll just say so." All right, so what will happen next? Trump won't consider staying in NATO. So what will happen next? First of all, basically nothing will happen. Legally, nothing will happen. Why? Because Trump cannot withdraw from NATO. Withdrawing from NATO must be approved by the US Congress. In other words, joining NATO requires Congress, and leaving NATO also requires Congress. Given the current sharp partisan confrontation in Congress, he may not be able to withdraw. Okay, that's the first issue. The second issue is that even if he can't formally withdraw, he can effectively withdraw. It's just like with the US Department of Education, right? Without congressional approval, you can't abolish the Department of Education, but Trump has already hollowed it out. Basically, it no longer functions or serves its purpose. Its influence keeps getting smaller and smaller. That's just how it is. So it's the same with NATO. Trump does have the ability to make it so that, in effect, the US no longer puts effort into NATO. So what does that mean for European countries? As everyone knows, there are several aspects to consider, such as NATO's funding, military strength, technology, and so on. In these aspects, it's simply impossible to separate from the United States. Let me first talk about a major issue. If Trump withdraws from NATO, Europe will immediately face the threat from Russia. How so? Do you know how many nuclear warheads Russia has? 5,800. Do you know how many NATO has? In NATO, only the UK and France have nuclear weapons. The total number of nuclear warheads is 500. Just 500. That's a ratio of less than 1 to 10. So, Russia's threat to Europe includes nuclear threats. This includes intercontinental missiles, nuclear submarines, and also strategic bombers. As for the UK and France, they only have nuclear submarines, basically just nuclear submarines. So, in this regard, it's also asymmetrical. That's right. So, when it comes to both sides, you might ask who would use nuclear weapons. The answer is neither side would use nuclear weapons lightly. But Russia's threat to Europe is like a sword constantly hanging over their heads. That wasn't the case before, right? Your work, your life, and everything else were all normal for us. Our security, the safety above our heads, was guaranteed by the United States, so there was no need to worry. But if the US withdraws, that sword hanging above your head could fall at any moment. So there's nothing you can do, because NATO simply doesn't have the capability to handle it. Things like nuclear attacks, interception, and response to such threats, NATO doesn't have that capability. That capability lies with the Americans. So that's the first issue. From then on, NATO would be living under a constant shadow, with a Damocles' sword hanging overhead. That's basically what it means. The second issue is Europe's military spending. Although it far exceeds Russia's, Europe spends $700 billion a year, while Russia only spends $150 billion. The combined European armed forces have 1.8 million personnel, while Russia only has 1.2 million. But do you know which country has the largest army in Europe? It's Turkey with 400,000 troops. Second is Poland with 200,000, and Germany also has only 200,000. France has only 180,000, Italy 170,000, and the UK 150,000. And it's not just them. They're scattered and each acts independently. In reality, they can't be united. If you can't unite, you have no combat effectiveness. And third, which is the most crucial point, it's that when it comes to fighting a war, the basic elements are missing. As everyone knows, war is a system. If you're missing even one component, the entire war effort collapses. The whole machine falls apart, let alone if you're missing several systems or several components. Let me tell you, the first component is long-range strikes. If you have to wait until you're face-to-face with the enemy before you can attack, how are you supposed to fight? Haven't you seen that people get beaten to a pulp before they even get close? So that's the first point. Long-range strikes. The second is aerial refueling, which is necessary during the course of war. In war, your planes shouldn't have to fly back. To keep fighting on the front lines, you need aerial refueling. All right, Europe doesn't have this either. The third is strategic transport, large-scale strategic supplies. This way, troops can be quickly deployed to their positions. The fourth is intelligence gathering. The fifth is missile defense. When the enemy launches missiles at you, can you intercept them? The sixth is very simple. Command and control, integrated command and control. NATO doesn't have these either, nor do European countries. The seventh is space and logistical support, which are also not strong. All of these are the backbone capabilities that the United States provides within NATO. Europe itself does not have this support. So there is an American organization called IISS, the International Institute for Strategic Studies. In fact, they recently conducted a dedicated study on this topic, a report. The question is, without the United States, can Europe defeat Russia? Their conclusion is that Europe can make up for it on its own, but the cost is very high. It can't be made up in just a few months. It would take several years to catch up, and the expenses would be enormous. Okay, as everyone knows, Trump recently pushed NATO countries to raise their military spending to 5% of their GDP. That 5% is just the norm. If you want to rebuild a national defense system, that's a one-time cost. The expenses would far exceed 5%. In reality, Europe simply can't manage it. As everyone knows, Professor Victor Hansen from the Hoover Institution at Stanford University has said that Europe simply doesn't have that 5%. Even if they make a commitment today, it doesn't matter because they really don't have the money. Everyone knows this. The four major European countries, Britain, France, Italy, run a fiscal deficit of 5% every year. In other words, every year their expenses exceed their income. Why is that? It comes down to three words. Welfare, welfare, welfare. Welfare spending is extremely high and simply cannot be cut. This is also an important part of their ideology. They believe this is altruism, what's called fatal altruism or suicidal altruism. Now, the only real pillar of fiscal surplus in Europe used to be its largest country, Germany. But starting from 2022, Germany has entered a new normal, a state of chronic loss. Now, Germany is also losing money every year. The German government is as well. Expenditures exceed income, losing 2% every year. Why is that? There are three reasons. First, rising energy costs. Energy prices have gone up. They've basically crippled themselves. Second, manufacturing's decline. Competing with the CCP, they've been picked off one by one. Third, military spending is up. Combined, these three factors, Germany is now also experiencing a situation where it loses money year after year. So, essentially, all of Western Europe is running a comprehensive deficit under these circumstances. In this situation, you still have to take on debt to rebuild your military industry and national defense capabilities. So all of this is just endless losses, as everyone knows. So, rationally speaking, they really can't and shouldn't go head-to-head with the United States. The US is like Europe's big brother, right? If your big brother scolds you a couple of times, snaps at you, or even slaps you, you just grumble and put up with it because you need your big brother to protect you. But now Europe not only refuses to put up with it, they're talking back and even refusing to let Big Brother into the house, right? That's exactly the situation. So do you think Big Brother wouldn't just walk away in anger? That's what it comes down to. So regarding Europe's performance in this Iran war, if you ask for my opinion, I think it's really irrational because you need something from others. That's just a fact. Of course, I also want to sum up my own observations here. At the very beginning, I said that the US wanted to form an international fleet, and I thought that was a bit too optimistic. I believed that it should be possible to form it. But now, looking at it, I was too optimistic, and what I said wasn't accurate. Why is that? I analyzed it a bit. Maybe I read Trump more accurately, but I didn't read Europe correctly. As for the international tariffs, I did get that right. I said that in the end, after everyone grumbled and complained, they would still end up signing it. And sure enough, they all signed it. Except for two countries, one was Canada and the other was the Chinese Communist Party. All the others signed it. But as for the international tariffs, although he signed it, he didn't send the international fleet. Why? Because even the international tariffs were forced upon him. He accepted it outwardly, but was not convinced in his heart and felt very angry and resentful inside. So after a certain point, he just couldn't take it anymore. This is my view. So what I want to say is that the anti-Trump sentiment in Europe and many parts of the world is far, far beyond, how should I put it, far beyond what I expected. My impression of Europe was still stuck at 15 years ago when I visited Europe. So this anti-Trump sentiment, I really think, has become irrational. Because you are hurting Europe and you're not even doing any basic calculations about it. Now it's like there's a sword hanging over your head every day, and Putin knows full well that you simply don't dare to act. If you don't make up your mind to defend yourself and he keeps advancing, what can you do, right? In the past, you had Big Brother America standing in the way, and Putin really didn't dare to make a move. But what about now? So it really has become like this, but I think the root cause is something else. To put it bluntly, it's the ideology of Europe and Western society. This kind of conflict is just like what happened with Carney in Canada, which is also a very typical example. In fact, Canada is not a major power economically. It is a small country. Yet he actually wanted to take a different path and become a leader with a unique approach. As a result, their economy started to shrink last December. Well, the contraction of the Canadian economy has only just begun. It will continue to shrink. While the US economy is growing strongly, Canada's economy will keep contracting. So why did he want to do this? Isn't being a prime minister supposed to be for the people of Canada? If the people are doing well, then you are doing well too, right? Just because of your own ideology and your different opinions from Trump, in the end, it has affected Canada. The people's economy is shrinking, living standards are declining, and national strength is weakening. Isn't that right? But honestly, this ideological conflict is the biggest conflict in Western society today. Today, I am once again talking to everyone. Let me share my views. Right now, there are two major conflicts in the world, two fronts. One front is the traditional one. It's the conflict between the violent Communist Party and Western free societies. The second is within the Western world itself, whether Western civilization should return to tradition and preserve its traditions. And the other is about abandoning tradition and moving toward what is called socialism. This is the conflict with Western socialism. Well, that's the current situation. So I don't know what everyone thinks about this. Here, I'm just sharing my own thoughts because I don't want my views to be wrong. If I am wrong, then I need to think carefully about this matter. So I really have to pay close attention. This also includes Europe, for example. Their attitudes toward Trump and, say, America's MAGA and so on. What are their views and how strongly do they hold them? It exceeded my expectations, so of course, this is also a reality of our world today. All right, let's talk about this next. So what do you all think? Regarding the United States withdrawal from NATO, what I call a substantial withdrawal from NATO, what do you think? Can everyone leave a comment? All right, everyone leave a comment or a message. I'd like to know. I want to see what everyone thinks because these are huge changes in the global landscape. These are major shifts in the world order happening just within these few days. While you're leaving comments, for those who aren't commenting, please click subscribe. All right, subscribe, follow, and turn on the little bell notification. That way, you won't miss this program. All right, so just click subscribe. That's all you need to do. As you can see on the screen, let's take a look. Today, there's another big news story. The Supreme Court is hearing what's being called the case of the century about birthright citizenship. So what exactly happened today regarding this matter? Well, today, the Supreme Court, there was a hearing about birthright citizenship. What is birthright citizenship? On his first day in office last year, Trump signed an executive order to abolish birthright citizenship. The idea that children born in the United States automatically have citizenship, there's no such thing anymore. Then people took the matter to court, and the case has been going back and forth in the courts. After going through the lower courts and appeals, today the case has reached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will hold a hearing today. As we all know, when the Supreme Court holds a hearing, it means the case is under review. I call this a review session. It usually lasts about 2 hours. Once the review is over, a decision is made, and that's it. There's no more back and forth. So what will happen during these 2 hours? There are 9 Supreme Court justices. What are their respective attitudes? From their questions, people can basically guess how the final ruling will turn out. As for the result, Trump said yesterday that he will go, as everyone knows. In American history, how many presidents have attended a Supreme Court hearing? How many people? 0. Why haven't any individuals gone? Because of the separation of powers, you just have to wait. So when others are doing their job, you shouldn't interfere. When the Supreme Court is handling matters, the president shouldn't interfere, just like when the president is holding a legislative meeting. If the justices were to come and sit in on a cabinet meeting, it would be the same thing. So in this case, the implication of going there isn't just limited to that. This might look like I'm applying pressure. Such suspicions exist. And if the president goes, his entire security team must follow. Then the security would be greatly heightened. And in the entire Supreme Court compound, in that room, there are only 150 people. This is called the audience seating, the gallery, so it would cause quite a stir. And if the president goes, there will be hundreds of reporters outside, right? 100 or 200 at least. So how many seats would that take up, including outside the Supreme Court? This would create nationwide pressure. So out of respect, in American history, presidents have never done this. They simply don't go to the Supreme Court to attend hearings, but Trump went today. So this is already the first time in American history that this has happened. What is the reason he went? That's what this is about. He believes it's important to this extent. So why exactly is it so important? First, let's mention that on Monday, Trump told reporters, actually not Monday, but yesterday, he said that a birthright citizenship was meant to protect the children of black slaves, to give them legal status, to give them American citizenship, not for wealthy Chinese people. What does that mean? Right now, in American political circles, everyone is saying that wealthy Chinese people are the ones who take the most advantage of this so-called anchor baby policy. It's called anchor babies. Those who are most able to take advantage of America's birthright citizenship are the wealthy and powerful who find surrogate mothers in the United States. One person can pay as much as $200,000 to have someone give birth to a child for them. They can find, if there are over 100 people, they can have over 100 children. And after these children are born, they get birthright citizenship and a citizenship certificate. With this birth certificate, they return to China. And after they turn 18 and grow up, they can come back again. They come back to vote and become official Americans. So especially in the United States, the Republican Party thinks this is outrageous. And there are even specific examples of this. There is a company in China, what is it called? An online gaming company called Duo Yi Wang. And its boss is called, what was his name again? Oh my, I've forgotten his name. Anyway, if any viewers know, you can mention his name. What was his name, really? So this Duo Yi Wang, he used surrogate mothers to have children. He had more than 100 American citizens born, most of them boys. What was the purpose? What was he trying to do? He wanted to establish a super family and set up his business succession plan. This person is called Shubo, and his company responded. It was said that after years of effort, Shubo had children through surrogacy in the United States. He said, how many people are there? He said there are only a little over 100. Why did he say only a little over 100? Because his ex-girlfriend said his total number of children might be as high as over 300. So this kind of practice is quite common in the United States. A political figure who is very wary of the Chinese Communist Party, it seems that this is not only an abuse of the immigration system, but also involves national security. They even estimate that babies born this way. There are over 1 million anchor babies in the United States, more than 1 million people. But if each person has dozens, several dozen, or even hundreds of children, then that 1 million people, it really is possible. And after these people grow up in China and are brainwashed by the Chinese Communist Party, they can openly return to the United States and become potential ticking time bombs within America in the future. This is how we should look at this issue, which is why Trump was extremely indignant, saying it was simply absurd. Let's talk about the historical background of birthright citizenship. In 1783, in San Francisco, a Chinese child was born, and this person was called Wang Kim Ark. His parents were legal residents. He was an American citizen, but his parents had come from the Qing dynasty in China. After he grew up, he returned to Guangdong. The reason why is unknown. In any case, he went back. The first time was fine, but when he returned the second time in 1895, after coming back, he was not allowed to enter through customs, not allowed in. Why? Because in 1883, the Chinese Exclusion Act had just been passed, which meant that Chinese people could not immigrate to the United States. So, since you are Chinese and you went back to China, to the Qing dynasty, you are not allowed to return. This was considered a violation of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Wang Kim Ark said, no, that's not right. I am an American citizen. I was born here. I grew up here. So what happened? He ended up getting into a legal battle with the U.S. government. Of course, at that time, it was the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association in San Francisco. They helped him file a lawsuit, and the case lasted 3 years, from 1895 to 1898. 3 years later, the Supreme Court ruled that even with the Chinese Exclusion Act in place, because of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, which states that anyone born in the United States is an American citizen, so they are American. Not even the Chinese Exclusion Act could override that. This further established what is called birthright citizenship. Of course, even earlier, it was already a matter of the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. What happened was this. Before Wang Kim Ark, after the American Civil War in 1865, the southern states rejoined the Union and resumed holding elections. You see, it was just old wine in a new bottle, right? Old wine in a new bottle means that the same people were electing the representatives. So basically, the pre-war mindset persisted even after slavery was forcibly abolished. So in various ways, they continued to discriminate against black people. This included denying citizenship to the children of black people. They simply wouldn't grant it to them. In the southern states, at the county level, legislation was enacted specifically to restrict them as a result. Later, the United States had no choice but to act at the federal level. The 14th Amendment to the Constitution was passed, stipulating at the federal level that anyone born in the country is a citizen. In fact, what this really meant was that the children of black people had to be recognized as citizens. The purpose of this was to render the laws of the southern states invalid. This was done to ensure the citizenship rights of black children. At that time, people might wonder, since this has already been passed, why only address the issue for black children? Why only give this right to black people and not to everyone? Everyone else remaining are citizens, right? So this became the text of the 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction are citizens of the United States. Okay. Later on, as I just mentioned, in the 1898 Supreme Court case of Wong Kim Ark, after the ruling, this principle was further reinforced. Being born in the United States means you are an American citizen. However, at the time when Congress was amending the Constitution, they never imagined, not even in their wildest dreams, that more than 100 years later, the United States would become a country admired by the whole world, a country that everyone wants to come to. And the cheapest way to come is to find a way to sneak in illegally. This is called rushing into the United States, and then having a child there. When this child turns 21, they can apply for their parents to immigrate. Usually a green card can be approved in as little as a year and a half. Because applying for a green card for parents has no waiting period for the whole family. In this way, they successfully immigrate. And then, through family-based immigration in the US, they bring over their brothers, sisters, and eventually every extended family member, one by one. They all legally move to the United States. This is what actually happens. All of this is based on the immigration reform passed in 1965. The law is called the Hart-Celler Act in English, named after the two senators. It brought about a major change in immigration, because before that, U.S. immigration was based on national quotas. That is the current makeup of the U.S. population. What does it look like? What percentage came from Ireland? What percentage from England? What percentage from Germany? So quotas were allocated to each country in proportion. But by 1965, this changed. It was changed to a merit-based system. People from anywhere in the world could freely immigrate to the United States, and immigration selection was based on skills and work as the standard. That means selecting the best candidates. At the same time, out of humanitarian considerations, because 1965 was the era of human rights and civil rights, so many humanitarian factors were taken into account, and for humanitarian reasons, family-based immigration was allowed. For example, children and their parents could immigrate without quota restrictions as a result. As a result, over the past 60 years, from then until now, 61 years, the entire U.S. immigration system has been completely distorted. The technology over these more than 60 years, immigrants account for less than 20%, but family-based immigration makes up more than 70%. One reason this 70% is so high is because of birthright citizenship. People try every possible way. They sneak, slip, or blend into the US, then have a child, and then bring their parents in, and then bring in their brothers and sisters. Then aunts, uncles, and distant relatives are brought in as well, and it ends up like this. So birthright citizenship later became known as the anchor baby phenomenon. These are babies born in the United States. This phenomenon has caused the entire U.S. immigration system to become completely unbalanced. So today, there is a problem. The Supreme Court, whether or not to correct this mistake, is exactly what the Supreme Court is holding a hearing on today. If Trump wins and birthright citizenship is invalidated, what does that mean? It means the entire motivation for illegal immigrants to flood into the United States will be gone. One of the most important motivations will be gone, because there will be no way to go from illegal to legal. So do you want to stay in the shadows for your whole life and for your descendants to do the same? Many people will just think, forget it, okay, but the most important thing about today's case is, what is the Supreme Court's difficulty? How should I put it? The Supreme Court, from this, Justice Scalia established and emphasized this, and this textualism, which is widely embraced and accepted by the more conservative-leaning justices currently serving on the Supreme Court, has been established as the rule for their judgments. What is textualism? It means ruling strictly according to how the Constitution is written, without extending its meaning. But on the other hand, the other approach is called living Constitution, meaning the Constitution is alive and should be interpreted differently at different times. Justice Scalia said this is absolutely unacceptable, as it would mean there are no principles at all. When we decide cases, first, we cannot take social changes into account. And second, we cannot consider personal opinions. Third, we cannot consider political trends. The Constitution should be interpreted exactly as it is written. Otherwise, the Constitution would drift. This is the idea. Even the personal views of the judges or justices themselves are completely unimportant. You just rule according to the original text. This is what's called textualism. This textualism, by coincidence, is actually correct. It may sound rigid, but in fact, it is right. Why? Because when the Constitution was first established, it was designed based on human nature. So if human nature doesn't change, the Constitution doesn't change. This is in line with the Founding Fathers. This was the classic consideration when it was originally designed. It just so happens to be perfectly consistent. So for conservative justices, textualism is there. The ironclad rule is judge as it is written, okay? It has nothing to do with our personal opinions as judges. But within textualism, there is another distinction. That is how you interpret what is written. Some interpret it by today's standards, while others interpret it by the standards of the time. If you go by the standards of that time, if you interpret it according to the standards of that time, that's called originalism. That original refers to original intent. Of course, for many laws, once the legal provisions are written down, textualism and originalism are actually the same thing. There's no real difference between today and back then, but sometimes there can be different interpretations. Still, no matter what, it's all about staying true to the original text, right? Okay, so let's go back and talk about that case from last month or the month before, the one about the United States. Tariffs, the United States tariffs case. After the ruling, Trump was extremely angry. I know he was very angry. A lot of MAGA supporters were also very angry. But how did the court rule at that time? The ruling was based on, the basis was the emergency economic powers that Trump had declared. The law itself does not give the president the authority to arbitrarily set tariffs. And as written in the Constitution, tariffs are set by Congress. In the United States, when it comes to major national affairs, it's Congress that has the final say. The specific details of implementation are decided by the president. That's how the work is divided. So if there are exceptions, they require authorization. In other words, certain specific exceptions. Congress says, I won't discuss it, I'll let you, the president, decide. But what this means is even though you have the final say, it's because I, Congress, say you have the final say. So ultimately, it's still Congress that has the final say. These exceptions where I say you have the final say are just that, exceptions. What are these? Sections 301, 232, and 201. Cases of unfair trade, dumping, or threats to national security. In these instances, the president has the final say, but only because Congress allows it. That's the American system. Because of this, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not grant the president any exceptions. And the Constitution also states that tariffs are the authority of Congress. So the Supreme Court, by a majority of 6-3, ruled against Trump. This is a classic example of a textualist decision. Now, if we think about it the other way around, if the ruling had been in Trump's favor, that would mean the president could arbitrarily declare a state of economic emergency. In an economic emergency, the president could then freely change tariffs at will. Let me give an example. In the future, if there's a new president who really doesn't like Israel, he could just declare a state of economic emergency. Then overnight, he could destroy Israel by raising tariffs on Israeli trade by 100%, 200%, or even 300%. That's what it means. You might say, no way, how could anyone do something so outrageous? But you can't just trust people, you have to trust the system. How can you be sure it won't happen, right? If Trump had lost, then in the future, no one could do this kind of thing. He would have to go through Congress, and he wouldn't have this kind of power in his hands. So the way to destroy Israel, so after talking in circles for so long, what I really want to say is this point. That's why there are tariffs between nations. Although Trump lost, and Trump was very unhappy about it, right? But if you ask me, I think the Supreme Court was still right. And although, according to the original text of the Constitution, tariffs are set by Congress, they can't just give them to you. But in reality, all the exceptions have already been given to you. You just need to put in a bit of effort. By following Section 232, 301, or 201, you can still get what you want, right? Isn't that the case? But what's special about this time? This time is different from the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It's not exactly the same. If this time they go strictly by textualism, Trump would definitely lose. Because it's clear. But the problem is it's obvious that the 14th Amendment was amended incorrectly. At that time, they didn't specifically mention black slaves. They should have written black slaves into it. Since they didn't, it became something broad and general. Now people are exploiting loopholes and misinterpreting it, so what should be done in this situation? If you want to judge strictly by textualism, how would you do it? There are two ways. One way is that if the Constitution was amended incorrectly, then you can only use another amendment to fix it. So we'll just judge by the text. Given the current two-party political standoff in the United States, amending the Constitution is practically impossible. It requires a 2/3 majority vote in both the House and the Senate, and after that, it still requires formal approval from 3/4 of all the states nationwide. That's impossible, so we'll set it aside. Second, use common sense to move beyond the textualism conservatives have always adhered to. Use common sense to correct the constitutional amendments made back then. This just shows how complicated this issue is. So, what does everyone think? Let's do a quick poll. Do you think the Supreme Court should rule in favor of Trump or against Trump? Shall we do a poll? Right, okay, let's do it. Finally, let's talk about one last piece of news. The UAE is preparing to join the war. The UAE now, that is to say, the news says they are preparing to join the war, preparing to use force to open up the Strait of Hormuz. So what about Abu Dhabi? According to reports, it is preparing to become the first Gulf state to participate in the conflict as a belligerent. The UAE is lobbying. for the UN Security Council to pass an authorization to allow it to use force. The resolution urges the US and allies to form a military alliance and assess how their troops can participate, including minesweeping and support. The UAE also wants to take this opportunity, for example, taking advantage of America's power to reclaim an island called Abu Musa, which has been occupied by Iran for a long time. Abu Musa Island is located on the strategic throat of the Strait of Hormuz. This island has been occupied by Iran for 50 years. There has always been a sovereignty dispute between the two sides over this. So Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the UAE, wants to take advantage of this war to resolve this territorial dispute that has lasted for half a century, this territorial dispute issue. So before, I kept telling everyone that the UAE and Saudi Arabia should send troops and take advantage of this opportunity because what the US lacks is ground forces. Now, if the US withdraws quickly, then this won't be possible anymore. What's going on here? But no matter what, this is just really cool. Oh dear. During the Trump era, there was major breaking news every single day, and it was always something huge. This is the kind of change that can overturn the entire situation. So that's the topic I wanted to bring to you today. All right. Now let's see if anyone has any questions. Let's take a look in a moment. Okay, let's have a look. If they announce a withdrawal but the enriched oil still hasn't been found, what should be done? I don't know. I can only say I don't know. If it is found in the future, the US might come back and fight again. As far as I know, right now, there's no sign of that. Today, on April Fool's Day, it's just the announcement of withdrawal. I'm also skeptical. This morning, I saw someone on Excel say, after British Prime Minister Stanley announced his resignation, it was later said to be an April Fool's joke. Maliang said, once it's built, the US will just leave. The US doesn't lack Middle Eastern oil. It's the countries that lack oil that need to figure things out themselves. They have to find a reasonable solution themselves. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your feedback. TKC said Trump is bluffing and hides his true plans. Misunderstood, he faces constant criticism. He likes to keep you guessing. Deception is a key tactic. When Trump fights, he acts accordingly. Many of the things he says are psychological tactics. Just because you hear him out doesn't mean that's really how things are. Not necessarily at all. Ma Liang said, once it's built, just withdraw. You just mentioned stabilizing the internal situation. Does that mean the Indo-Pacific region is facing danger? If the US focuses most of its attention on the Middle East, then the US needs to withdraw, meaning to concentrate its military forces in the Indo-Pacific region. In this sense, that's how it is. As everyone knows, 3 aircraft carrier strike groups have already been deployed. In the past, those 11 US carrier groups weren't always out at sea all the time. Many of them need maintenance and repairs, so half of America's military strength is sent to the Middle East. This actually means that the Indo-Pacific region is currently facing danger. All right, so Jin Chen says, without the Warsaw Pact as an opponent, it's normal for NATO to become weak and ineffective, like a paper tiger, and to let its guard down. What's going on here? Okay, Dash says that cutting losses now is the smart thing to do. No one can guarantee that every decision will be completely correct. That's right now, it really is a time to cut losses. Everyone knows that if the US withdraws, once it pulls out, things will just return to the way they were before. Basically, it's a situation where they can afford to withdraw now. But I still don't understand what today's European leaders are thinking. Are they really willing to sacrifice their countries and their people just to uphold their political ideals? But if you lose your country and your people, do those political ideals even still exist? Yes, that's the question. He's doing it all for his political ideals. They would rather sacrifice their country and their people. This really is a contradiction. I can't believe he would actually do this. Honestly, I really want to spend a bit of time to try to understand what these European leaders are thinking. Sometimes from our perspective, it just seems unbelievable, doesn't it? But within that system, he is able to justify himself. It's just that right now, I don't really understand how that system works, including a lot of things that are done in the United States. You might ask, do they want to destroy America? What's wrong with these people? What good would destroying America do for them? But that's how outsiders think about it. For them, some of their beliefs are deeply held. They have their own set of arguments and beliefs, and some of them are just playing others. What they want is power, their own personal power compared to that of the country. Of course, the former is more important, right? For some people with bad intentions, that seems perfectly reasonable. Sun Wukong said that without a large number of troops, you can't control the oil. That's what Dash Zhu said. Considering Europe, given their shamelessness, they will try to ease relations with Russia, right? But how can you ease things? What Russia wants is not just Ukraine. What he wants is his entire sphere of influence. This is a direct conflict of interests. How exactly are you supposed to ease tensions with him? If you say you want a reason, should I just give you everything? If you want Poland, should I give you Poland? If you want the Czech Republic, should I give you the Czech Republic? Right? There's no way to ease things. This is like fire and water, completely incompatible. May I ask Teacher Fang Wei, what do you think would happen if Trump goes to the East Asia Summit in May? What issues would be discussed? Would there be anything substantive? No, I don't think so. This time, the Chinese Communist Party has been doing a lot of manipulation behind the scenes. The United States hasn't been criticizing anyone. In fact, Trump criticizes Europe more. He hasn't really criticized the Chinese Communist Party at all. His criticism of Europe shows he holds no grudges. He thinks we're on the same side. But he doesn't criticize the Chinese Communist Party because deep down he knows exactly what's going on. So I don't think anything will come out of these talks. There won't be anything substantive. Trump is just weighing when to act against the CCP. If the US and Europe split, China and Russia might win by default, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think it's certain. This topic is really worth discussing. If the US and Europe fall out, it's only natural that Europe would turn to the Chinese Communist Party, right? In fact, just the other day, they already did. Macron went, Scholz went, and even Morawiecki went. But what did they get out of it? Nothing at all. Now, China's manufacturing industry is set to destroy Europe's manufacturing industry. The European market is about to be completely taken over by Chinese manufacturing. Dealing with them is basically digging your own grave. It's also a sharp conflict, so I think they are really, as for how the Chinese side could win, I really don't know, unless Europe says, I'll just destroy myself and give everything to you. But that's impossible, right? But Russia is indeed in a situation where both paths are blocked. What he chooses is up to him. Sanjichi said that a declining Europe isn't important as long as the Asia-Pacific situation is stable. That's good enough. Right now, that's how it seems. The Middle East and Indo-Pacific are the most important. Focus on the Middle East first, then the Indo-Pacific. Do you know what the U.S. national security strategy is? The Americas come first, right? The Americas first, Indo-Pacific second, Middle East third, Europe fourth, right now. It seems that's just how it is, and it has to be that way. This time the U.S. suffered heavy losses at its military bases in the Middle East. Regional allies see that America's air defense is unreliable. Oil and water plants could be destroyed overnight. Did the U.S. really suffer heavy losses at its Middle Eastern bases? No, the losses weren't that bad. It wasn't that serious. Others have also withdrawn. So, is American air defense unreliable? The U.S. air defense shot down over 90% of the incoming attacks, which were mainly drones and missiles. So, if you didn't have that, then it would truly be unreliable. I think the U.S. did its best. But it's true that their oil and water facilities can't necessarily be fully protected, because if even one gets through, it can cause huge losses. But is he really that disappointed? I don't think he's that disappointed, but of course, if you say there's some disappointment, that's possible. Sun Wukong said the Middle East has already been discussed. Just now, the American base in the Middle East was bombed so badly that the radar was almost completely destroyed. Saudi Arabia's airport was bombed, and the early warning aircraft. It wasn't as serious as with the refueling aircraft. Just one radar was destroyed. Where was it almost completely destroyed? It was just one radar that was bombed, and at the airport, the Saudi airport, the early warning aircraft was bombed. As for the oil and refueling aircraft, it was just that one time, right? That's just the situation. An American aircraft carrier needs to be out of service for 14 months. Maybe the sailors themselves didn't want to fight and started a fire. Oh, well, that's just your guess. Probably not. China hopes the U.S. will keep fighting for another 10 years. In the past, both of America's wars lasted over 20 years. The national debt has hit a new high. This is a historic opportunity for China. Yes. So Trump definitely wouldn't, get involved in a prolonged conflict. He wouldn't do that. He'd enter a mode of mutual harm to see who gets hurt more. As for oil exports, oil-producing countries can limit exports, keep some for their own use, and lower prices. Okay, so oil-producing countries can limit their exports, that's right. But that's also very difficult. Anyway, the Gulf countries would be hit hard, and China, India, Japan, and also South Korea. Actually, there's also Taiwan. Taiwan would also suffer significant losses, because a lot of oil is imported from the Middle East. NZ0 says Russia would love for the US to keep fighting so oil prices stay high and they can profit from it. Russia is making a lot of money now. XYZ says President Trump has demonstrated strategic initiative in import and export controls. The United States is no longer pursuing lengthy negotiations, but instead is thoroughly weakening Iran's military power. In exchange for results, they refuse to get bogged down in a long-term war. As for regions like the Strait of Hormuz, the problems are left for each country to solve on their own, with governments shifting their focus to domestic agendas. Winning the midterm elections is a must. What you said is indeed Trump's way of thinking. Willie Tao said that this time, with HIMARS, you could strike from the UAE and then coordinate further. At this range, you could use HIMARS to launch strikes from the UAE. And then coordinate with naval and air forces. Okay, fine. Do you think Trump would strike Iran's desalination plants? Yes, 25%. No, 75%. So the majority of viewers still think the same way I do. I'm very curious. Let's keep watching and basically observe for another 2 weeks. Then we'll know whether Trump will do that or not, and that's it. Just to scare them a little. All right, then, that is looking quite good for now. So our scheduled program for today is going to come to an end right here. Let me think. All right, I think we should probably just leave it at that for the time being. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.